Welcome to Transcending Sport with me, Chris Stafford. This is the show where we tell the stories of women who are making a difference behind the scenes, breaking ground, literally. And our guest this time is Jenny Nguyen, who is literally doing just that with a brand new, what she's calling the sports bra, but it's actually a sports bar in Portland, Oregon. And Jenny joins me now. I think the time is getting closer to when you actually open the door, Jenny. How are you feeling right now?
Oh, I am feeling overwhelmed. But I feel like every day something's getting checked off the list. So that's good. And, you know, what's really inspiring is just all the positive feedback and all the support from people all over the place has been really, really rewarding and fulfilling. And that kind of has energized me in what I would say is a very daunting task.
Just imagine, it's a very ambitious, brave move by you. But first of all, a huge congratulations. I told you before we started recording, when I heard about this, I thought, what a damn good idea. This is genius, Jenny. Why hasn't somebody done this before? This has so much potential. So tell us a little bit about the concept and how it came about.
Sure. So, I've been playing sports my whole life. I would say I picked up a basketball when I was 5 years old and tried to start dribbling. And I really haven't stopped dribbling since then. And almost everybody I know plays sports, or I've met them through sports. Our closest friends are from a pickup basketball league. I met my girlfriend playing pickup basketball 12 years ago. So a lot of us, you know, I don't think we ever would have met had we not had basketball in common. And now we're just, you know, we're in each other's lives. We're godmothers to their kids. And so we often would go out and watch games or try to watch games, women's sports events at bars or sports bars around town. And it always kind of felt like a challenge, whether we would go in and of the hundreds of TVs that were on, we wouldn't be able to find the women's game on. And we'd always have to ask for them to change a channel. Sometimes there were so many people in there watching a particular game or games that they weren't able to change a channel for us. So it was always kind of a struggle, but, you know, we got used to it because it was just the way things were. And all of that kind of changed. I remember in my mind, the seed was planted in 2018 when I was with a bunch of friends and we went to go watch the NCAA women's basketball finals. And it was Notre Dame against Mississippi State. And we roll into this sports bar and, you know, again, there's tons of TVs and that's a really big game. And that game wasn't on. So there was probably a dozen of us and we pushed some tables together and we asked the server if she could change a channel. She was like, absolutely. And she found this little TV kind of towards the corner of the bar. And so we proceeded to watch this game. And it ended up being one of the best games I'd ever seen. You know, it was a comeback from behind, like 23 down or something like that. And then a last second 3-pointer to win the game. And it was just incredible. We just jumped for joy. I think I threw my hat in the air. It was like kind of a ridiculous, like explosion of feelings. And I remember a couple things. One was that nobody else in the bar knew what we were shouting about because nobody else was watching that game. So we kind of looked ridiculous. And then another thing I remember very clearly was when we were leaving, we were all in the parking lot kind of saying goodbye and like, what a great game that was. And somebody had said, man, just imagine how much better that game would have been if the sound had been on. And it was then that I had realized that we had watched that entire game with no sound on, but we had gotten so used to kind of, I don't want to say a second class citizen, but kind of just being, you know, not catered to in that way.
The shadow.
Exactly. So at that point I had said totally in jest and like totally joking out of kind of frustration, I said, yeah, the only time we're ever going to be able to watch a game like fully is if we open our own place. And that was like the first time I mentioned it. And it was totally a joke. And I think the next day... It
really wasn't a joke, though, was it? You were
well,
when was that, Nick? How long ago?
That was in 2018. was when that moment happened. But again, it really was just something I said out of frustration. It was a joke. There was nothing behind it at the time. And I think either the next day or a couple days later, I came up with the name, the sports bra, because I really love puns and like wordplay or alliterations, all of that stuff. I'm kind of a nerd about. And so I was like, oh yeah, you just switch the 2 letters. It changes everything, and then we can have the motto be, we support women, like a bra. And so after that, my girlfriend, exactly, sports bra. And my girlfriend and I would make jokes referring back to the sports bra. Like if we would go out to eat at a bar watching a game. And so both of us try to eat as little gluten and dairy as we can. And so oftentimes you go to these sports bars and there's really not that many options for people with dietary restrictions. Mm-hmm. And so we would make comments like, oh, at the sports bra, we would have this in a vegan version, or at the sports bra, this gymnastics game would be on. And it was just kind of like this running joke of this fictional place. And I'd never considered it, as a reality. And then all of that changed in 2020 when, the pandemic hit. There was a bunch of social justice movements, and basically the world, to me and to millions of other people, seemed to turn on its head. And it was really a chance for lots of folks. I don't think I'm the only person at all to think this, but to reevaluate like your life, your perspective, what your priorities are. And so it was kind of a wake up call. I was doing a lot of learning and unlearning about history and, everything and my role in it. And I had been working in like soup kitchens, like now and then with a local homeless teen shelter, and delivering food boxes and donating, like those little things that, kind of help me feel like I'm part of a solution a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it got to the point where I felt like, I felt like there was more that I could do, but I just didn't know what that was. And it was, I wouldn't say a stress on me, but it was definitely kind of like eating away at me about how I can contribute more. And it was at that time when my partner, Liz, she was like, how you always joke about the sports bra? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, why don't you do it? And when she said it, I was like, what does that have to do with anything? How would that affect anything that's happening? And we got to talking about it. And like, it was kind of like an onion peeling back layers upon layers of how, that tiny little thing about changing the channel and making women's sports accessible to the general public and making a space to celebrate women's sports. All of those things started to peel back. And then the realization that this could have, at least an impact in our community. And then on the greater scale, maybe, don't want to like overshoot it, but, maybe this would get people more invested in women's sports by seeing that there's an interest, because so much of women's sports, there are millions of women's sports fans out there, that. Mm-hmm. And, your listeners know that, but the general public and mainstream media, I believe they don't think that that's true because they're not seeing it. And when I think about how women's sports fans celebrate women's sports, there's really only 2 ways that I can think of. One is that they buy a ticket and they go to that game, which is very limited seating and limited when you can do it.
Sure.
2, they're online. They're streaming games online. They're chatting, tweeting, sharing, liking, commenting, all this stuff online, which can be done in the palm of their hand, in the privacy of their own home, inside their car, at their workplace, not in a place that is public and visible. And so when as I thought more about the sports bra and what it could mean, having a space that shows people the interest and the amount of, there's so much untapped potential financially for businesses, companies, organizations, mainstream, large businesses, companies to invest in women. And really if that happens, you're talking about funding women's sports. You're talking about more equity in pay, and just on and on and on, the domino effect, you know?
Yeah. And you're increasing the visibility. You know, people can walk in off the street and see women's sports. You know, young girls can see women's sports as well as the sports fans out there. And the mainstream, as you say, the public who otherwise wouldn't have easy access to watching women's sports.
100%. And like people don't, I feel like people don't know that they're missing it until they realize that they're missing it. And so you have to give them something to miss. So now, you know, the sports bra, the idea and everything has really like triggered a bunch of people to really talk about the conversation of not why hasn't this been happening? Like, this is 2022. Like, seriously? And so now it's like, wow. And it's kind of like a light bulb, you know? And then when people do realize that there are so many people interested, you know, now we can start seeing investment in it. And it's like companies can be like, oh, wow, you know, this has got a really great response. Maybe there is, you know, profits to be made here.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. But it's great to have an idea, but how did you turn the idea into reality? Did you have any background in business and restaurant and, you know, catering?
Sure. That's a great question. So I had played basketball like my whole life. It became my identity, you know, all through middle school, high school. I was like the basketball player. And that's what everybody kind of knew me as. And it helped me get through, you know, the awkward years as being a varsity basketball player. So that helped. But my first year in college, about a week before my first basketball game, I blew out my ACL. I was 19 years old, and it really just, you know, not to be over dramatic, but at the time I was devastated. I just felt like my identity was gone. And I kind of went through a little like a depression, you know, and I was on my way to college and I just didn't know what was the next step for me. So I get to college in Bellingham, and the food at the cafeteria was leaving me much to be desired. So I started to cook in the dorms on my own and realized that I really liked it. And so like I started to cook more and more, and then more for my friends, and realized that it was really a passion. So I went from being kind of a basketball player to loving cooking. And so I immediately told my parents that I wanted to be a chef. And, you know, at first they were not approving, but they said that if you finish college, you know, you can do whatever you want. So that's what I did. I finished college and I came back to Portland and went to Western Culinary Institute. I did an expedited program there while working full time at some fine dining restaurants in Portland, and then have been cooking ever since. So I'd been cooking in kitchens for over 15 years. And my latest job was as executive chef at Reed College for Bon Appetit Food Management Company, which is a large corporate. We do a lot of corporate kitchens.
So you're turning your passion into a real purpose now, aren't you?
Right. So it just seemed like the perfect meld of sports, my love for sports, particularly basketball, and my love for food, which is cooking. And so it seemed like the perfect mix, and kind of, I don't believe in destiny really. So just the finest of coincidences. And I was born and raised in Portland. So this is my hometown.
Yeah. And what a better place to, I mean, there really is a wonderful location for this too. You know, so much happens in Portland. It's really the it city, isn't it? So I can imagine that you have a community there just waiting for you to unlock that door.
Oh yeah, it's been incredible. People are so excited. Like I had imagined people would be like, people I know and friends and family and stuff would be excited, and other fans would be excited. But it's been like, I've been getting messages from people who are like, we don't even like sports and we cannot wait to come. You know?
Oh, you're going to convert them, you see. You're going to bring a new audience to women's sports, Jenny.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like just give people the access and they will come.
Well, what's the expression? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's the one. Exactly.
So you've obviously you have the skills to manage the restaurant and for the catering side of things, but then you have to put a business plan together, and you have to find a premises that will work for this in the right location. Put all those pieces together for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly, when I got started, I realized that I don't know 99% of anything that I need to know. And I don't think anybody does. So realizing how little you know, I think is a key to moving forward in this process. Like even with all of my restaurant experience, like that portion of it feels like so little of actually what's happening. I will let you in on a little secret. And that's that the very first thing I did was I went to NerdWallet online and looked up how to start your own business. And I think that they have like a 12 basic steps on how to start your own business. And I basically walked those steps through NerdWallet because they do a great job of using layman's terms, which is the only thing that I understand really. And making it very like plausible.
But were you not nervous at that point thinking, well, all these pieces have got to come together, but it actually could happen? That can be a little bit overwhelming too if it's your first business, Jenny.
Oh, absolutely. Completely overwhelming and 100% nervous, 100% scared. And to this very day and to this very moment, and I'm sure for the next probably 3 years, I will feel the exact same way. It is all.
It's an adrenaline high too, though, isn't it? I mean, that's all of that anticipation and excitement, and that you're doing something that would have some meaning, and you will feel fulfilled doing it. Mm-hmm. But you're finding that there's a need for this, and it's something that's really taking off. I mean, you've got all the feelings there, Jenny.
I do have all the feelings. Indeed, you nailed it right on the head. I have all the feelings about it. I just think having a great community of support and asking for help, like realizing that you don't know anything and then finding the people who do know,
yes,
and putting them on your team. Yeah. And like, I wish that there was a way that somebody could draw, like if I could draw a picture of how I feel about this adventure of opening the sports bra, I would draw a picture of me standing up and then behind me about 1,000 hands holding me up, because that's what it really is. I don't think anyone does this alone. And I just want to, with my social media and everything, I'm trying to make sure that people know that there is just a huge community of help that I'm getting behind me. So
that's awesome. As they say, it takes a village, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
So you've got the property then. Tell us where that's located and how you found it. Was that a long hunt or did you get lucky?
Sure. So we're located at 2512 North East Broadway. So it's Northeast Portland. Broadway is a pretty main street. When I first started hunting, I talked to my broker and, she was like, what's your ideal location? And I told her Broadway was my ideal location. And her boss were both shocked because that area is it's a little older. People have kind of went from that area to these newer parts of Portland, kind of further out. Broadway is very centrally located. The reason I chose Broadway is because, again, I was born and raised in Portland, and Broadway reminds me of old Portland that I grew up in. There are so many areas of Portland that are so hip and so trendy and so cool. And I love being there. I love going there. But when I do go there, I feel a little bit out of place. I don't know if that makes sense, like a tourist kind of. But when I go to areas like Broadway or, Alberta and Mississippi, like those places, they feel a little more comfortable to me. They feel a little closer to home, like the old Portland that I grew up at. And then what's funny is one of my dad's first jobs ever when he came to Portland he was a handyman for a building that is 2 blocks away from the restaurant. So Yeah. So it just is close to home for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you found the property, and then obviously you had to go through all that entails of, was it a lease or did you buy the building?
It's a lease. I have a lease on it. And the owner of the building, he is also a chef and was a restaurateur. And, I think that he probably had a bunch of interest in the space because it is a good location and it's a good size. But he texted me and he was like, I really love this concept. And when he said that, I was like, okay, I think I got a shot at this.
Yeah.
Because the market in Portland is very hot, both housing, restaurants, all of the above. And coming out of COVID, I think that things are just getting snatched up. So I wasn't anticipating finding a place as soon as I did. It was a bit of luck for sure.
But then, so the real work begins then now, right? You've got beyond concept, you've got the property, but then it comes to design. And what was your seating capacity there, Jenny?
So it's about 45 to 50 indoors, which is, a cozy spot. And we do plan on having some outdoor seating eventually. But yeah, it's kind of just one big open room with like banquette seating on one side, which is great for viewing TVs. There's some seating at the bar for like 12 folks and then a few tables. And I'm having a couple larger tables built by a nonprofit organization called Girls Build. And a friend of ours is the founder of Girls Build. And it's an organization that teaches young girls ages 7 to 13, I believe, how to do construction, building using power tools. Oh, and I really wanted this space to feel and be a spot for community of all ages. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, do you think the girls would be interested in making some furniture for the bra? And she was very, very excited because I don't think that they've had public installations before. And so a place for the girls to come and be like, I made that, and sit with their friends and family and watch sports, I think is really important. So I was really excited to hear that they were into it.
I love that. And then, of course, there's the decor and, furnishings and all the rest of it. What help have you had to make all those big decisions, Jenny?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I have so much help. There's constantly friends coming in, bringing things, or for example, yesterday, a really good friend of mine who is a realtor and does like a lot of interior design stuff. She came in and helped me place and hang like a bunch of picture frames and, where the jerseys are going to go or where the hockey stick's going to hang, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So really reaching out to people that I am acquainted with or know, or even strangers online have been like, hey, these are my strengths. How can I help? Reaching out to those folks and really like tapping into the community to make this really a space for everybody, not just mine. You know what I mean? Sure,
absolutely. But then there's the tech side of things, isn't it? There's the screens and then subscriptions to all the sports channels.
Totally.
Did you have to do that or did you have some help with that?
It is a work in progress. So content is a really important thing. And this was something that I had delved into early on in my business concept, like conceptualizing the business and writing the plan. Content was really important. And we all know that, only 4% of all sports on TV here in the States is women's sports. So how do you make it so that the TVs have something on? So I started to reach out to leagues and things like that because many of the streaming services are for personal use only, and they do not have a commercial licensing ability. So a majority of women's sports, especially the smaller sports, that WISP is interested in, all of those are subscriptions on, these tiny streaming services. Yeah. And there's dozens and dozens of them. And those are not, they're not really allowed in a commercial setting. So I've been reaching out to leagues, different networks, trying to get permission, trying to figure out those things. But it's a slog. And, when people talk about how come this hasn't happened before, this I imagine could be one of the big hurdles to jump is content. But one thing I really want to express is that It could also be part of the exposure of the lack of media by, let's say, we open at 11 and there are no games until 6 p.m. Let's say I keep all the TVs off until that 6 p.m. game. So, we're so accustomed to always having something to watch on TV. And maybe it would be so impactful for people to come into the sports bra and all the TVs are dark and they being like, where are the sports? And also, and the answer is there aren't any on TV, so that is definitely an option. So having those moments like, aha, and then just drawing that awareness, but still having the space, for people to be at and drink and eat and be surrounded by memorabilia of women's sports teams and jerseys and things like that. And to share that experience, I think is still going to be fantastic, even with the TVs off. But if there are games on TV, we will show them.
But wouldn't that be an opportunity for advertisers and sponsors to advertise in the sports bra on those screens? That's real estate.
100%. I agree.
So we're putting out a call here to any potential advertisers and sponsors. There are blank screens at the sports bra, and we need your support.
That's right.
Yeah. I think it's just a brilliant idea, Jenny. Hopefully you'll be able to get more and more women's sports coverage on those screens as you grow. I'm curious about the menu, though, because when you said how you like metaphors and so on, are you choosing menu items and coming up with clever women's sports names for those menus?
I had considered it, but I really like the simplicity of just saying what it is.
Okay.
I had considered naming a couple items after female athletes.
Oh, some specials.
Exactly. Yeah. But my attorney says that there are some laws against that. So until I can get permission from them to name a sandwich after them, we're going to stick with just a Philly cheesesteak for now.
Sports terms, not necessarily the names, but the sports.
Oh, sure. I do have some cocktails that I have named after some sports terms because I think that's fun.
That's fun. So you have your liquor's license. When are you opening?
So the goal is to open the first week of April.
Okay. And how are you opening? Have you got some big stars out there coming to open for you?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Well, if there's any big stars out there listening, I think you should trot down to North East Broadway and cut the ribbon for Jenny. I think that's a big occasion in and of itself, right? I think that should be a moment to attract the media and get some big names there to stand behind you as you cut the ribbon.
Sure, I appreciate the shout out.
There you go. But Jenny, this clearly, as I said to you before we started recording, this is such a great idea. It just speaks franchise to me around the country because I don't see another sports bar for women anywhere in the US of A. Do you?
Mm-hmm. I don't, and I haven't seen one. I've seen some pop-ups where they take over a bar for like a night or, to view a game. But nothing that has been a full-fledged, dedicated sports bar like the Sports Bra. Yeah, I envision that perhaps in the future there will be more of them across the country. That's a long-term dream of mine. But for now, I'm focusing on getting the Sports Bra PDX off the ground and successful.
Yes. And I should say that, since I'm in shouting distance of Washington, D.C., what a great sports area we are in here. So if there's anyone listening who thinks this would be a good idea to have one on the right coast as well as on the left coast, so they should contact you. Jenny, tell us where the website is and your social media, how people find you.
Sure. The website is www.thesportsbrapdx.com. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook with the handle @thesportsbrapdx.
Can you schedule a time a little bit further down the road that you come back on the show and tell us how it's going in 3 months, 6 months? We would love to hear how the Sports Bra is doing.
I would love to do that.
Fantastic. Jenny, the very, very best of luck. If I was in the same room with you, I would give you a big hug and tell you the best of luck, my friend. You go get them. And I think it's going to be just fantastic. I wish you all success with it. And take care. And if anyone is listening, go to the Sports Bra if you're anywhere on the left coast there. Go and visit Jenny and her friends and have one of those cocktails. Or what's going to be kind of the specials to kick off with, Jenny? What have you got in mind?
So we've got 4 cocktails that were created by a local spirits company here in Portland. It's women-owned, women-operated, called Freeland Spirits. And they've just developed some excellent cocktails for us. And one of them is kind of a showstopper. It's called the Title IX.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's got one of their bourbons in it. It's a pretty tasty beverage. And they specialize in gin, so we'll have a few different gin drinks as well.
Well, if I find myself in the neighborhood, I will be coming to visit you too, Jenny. The very, very best of luck. Thank you again for taking time to come on the show. You take care.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And you find the links to the Sports Bra and their social media with the show notes accompanying this episode, both on your podcast app and at wissports.com. Look for Transcending Sport. And, of course, don't forget to follow us on social media at Wisp Sports. And if you have any suggestions or questions for any of the guests that we have here on the show, then do drop us a line to info@wissports.com or post a message on our social media channels. I'm Chris Stafford, and until the next time, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.